This is Kev Millar from the 2004 World Champion Boston Red Sox, and you're listening to Boston's Big Three podcast presented by Ride the Wave Media. All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Boston's Big Three. We are here today with Billie Weiss. He's the Senior Manager of Photography for the Boston Red Sox. Billie, thank you for coming. It's definitely a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you guys so much for having me. Appreciate it.
So one thing that I am new to Ride the Wave. Not a lot of people really know my background, but one of the reasons, Billie, why I reached out to you is obviously we're all Red Sox fans here. But I was a photographer in the United States Army. I was combat camera at Fort Meade. So I was in the Baltimore area while you have a little bit of Baltimore ties. So I want to start by just discussing a little bit of pre-Red Sox stuff and get to know more about you. So, first of all, I just have to ask, because it's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine as someone who actually lived in Baltimore City. Your bio says that you grew up in Baltimore. Are you like Owings Mills or are you Baltimore?
I was Towson area.
Area.
Lutherville, Timonium area specifically. Right. Yeah.
Okay, we'll count it.
Yeah.
So like what got you into photography, I'm assuming, as a kid? Was it like a high school class? Was it something your parents did, or?
Yeah, so a couple of things. I started taking classes in high school, and I enjoyed it. It kind of felt more natural to me and just kind of came easy to me compared to some of the other things in high school, like math. I was terrible. Science was terrible, so it's just kind of something that felt easy. And in high school, I didn't really think about it as a career. I just recognized at the time that it was something I enjoyed doing. But I grew up in a really creative household. My dad is an artist and my mom is a pianist. They're both professors of art and music. So growing up, it was always a really creative environment, and that kind of fostered all types of creativity, drawing, playing music, and eventually photography. So those two kind of factors really started it off for me.
All right, and then let us know, you went to Goucher College. Mm-hmm. Did you do any journalism there, photojournalism there? Did you take any classes there, or did you was that something you still kept to the side, or did you really, once you got to college, decide that this is something that I have a talent for, that I have a love for, and pursue it that way?
Yeah, I definitely got more serious about it once I got to college. I pretty quickly joined the student newspaper, and that's kind of what, was my first experience in actually shooting with a purpose and having actual direction behind what I was shooting, not just kind of going out and shooting whatever I could find just for the sake of making art, I guess. And so that kind of gave me an initial direction. There was no journalism major. I was a communications major, which is obviously, as you guys know, pretty broad, and there's a million different ways that you can go with it.
But communications major.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying. A whole lot of fields you can go with it.
You can go anywhere you want with that.
Yeah.
So I tried to focus it on photography and, use resources like the student newspaper as a platform to shoot as much as I can. So I was pretty much, once I had gotten on the newspaper staff, I was pretty much out there shooting anything I could get my hands on campus, obviously sports, which I loved, but also the student events and gatherings and, portraits of faculty and staff and guest speakers that would come to campus, really anything that was happening. And that kind of allowed me to build a portfolio and kind of, think about it in a more career driven way, not just kind of, taking pictures because I thought it was fun.
So growing up, were you an athletic kid, or were you more of the artsy kind, or were you kind of a hybrid?
I was a Renaissance man. No, I played baseball growing up all the way through varsity baseball in high school. I played tennis for my college team, just Division III, NCAA tennis team. So yeah, I love sports. I grew up watching sports. I grew up playing. I think I wasn't overly artistic. I always preferred to be outside, playing and, hooping around or whatever over the piano lessons that I had to take and whatnot. But that side of me was there, And so it was kind of like a balance of the two.
So you graduate from Goucher in what year?
2011, a long time ago.
Just trying to think back to 2011 or 2010. I may have shot, probably not yours because I'm sure there was a lot, but I shot a Goucher graduation one day. Yeah,
maybe it was.
I did like the second shooter happy snaps of the.
Nice.
Yeah. So you graduate from Goucher. You said you have your portfolio built. Did you shoot just Goucher stuff when you were at Goucher? Did you reach out to Towson or UM or anything like that?
No, and looking back, like I wish I did, because there was so much going on in that area. But I didn't really have the thought at the time. I did do a few internships in college while I was in college, and that, from a professional standpoint, that kind of started things off for me. So, but I wish I did reach out. I tell, people who are in college, like, take advantage of what's around you because there's so much going on. So, something I wish I did, but it all worked out.
So then explain how you went from Goucher College graduate to Orioles photography intern.
So basically this was my sophomore year of college. I had pretty much put together what I thought at the time was a good portfolio or decent portfolio, and used it to start applying for internships, photography related internships. And
so you were kind of shotgunning them out, or you didn't just go just Baltimore?
Shotgunning. I was going for a lot, and landed on the Orioles, but it's kind of I'll tell the story quickly, but with my tennis team, we went to watch like a charity tennis match. It was like Serena Williams and I think John McEnroe or whatever at First Mariner Arena in Baltimore.
I shot that.
You were there? Okay.
Yeah,
So
I photographed that. Yeah.
Okay.
Isner was there, right?
Yes, Isner.
Yeah, I photographed that. That's crazy.
Okay, so that night was like a big moment for me in my career because I had kind of been starting to think about photography and how I can like turn it into a career. And I remember going up to, I saw the the professional photographers on the sideline with like all the big lenses and stuff or whatever. And after I went up to one of them and just basically was like, hey, do you have any advice for a young photographer? I'm in college. I'm kind of trying to start out. And, he ended up being really nice and talking to me. And turns out he was Rob Carr, who was then a staff photographer for Associated Press. He's since moved on to shoot for Getty. But, we got to talking and I went down to the AP bureau in Baltimore and he looked at my stuff and gave me all kind of advice. And he's actually the one that pointed me in the direction of the Orioles and told me that they actually had a photography internship. So I always look back at that like kind of chance encounter as kind of like a big moment. And had I not done that, it's like, who knows where things would have ended up, maybe still at the Orioles or maybe somewhere else. But
I'm just glad you didn't come up to me because I was rocking a long lens that day. So I'd be like, I don't know, man. Like,
it could have been you, man.
So it's weird. Like, so it seems like even though I'm a little bit older than you, when at that point in time in Baltimore,
Mm-hmm.
You were shooting, seems like kind of similar stuff as I was shooting. I was also putting together my portfolio. I was shooting a lot of stuff at UMBC for Ride the Wave fans. They're that 16 seed that beat Virginia.
Yeah.
That was right down the street. I was living in Catonsville at the time. I actually came across a photographer that I'm guessing Gail Burton, shoots for AP.
Of course.
So I did a lot of stuff with her, and this is where you're gonna break my heart because I in 2011 put in for an internship with the Orioles.
Oh.
And did not get it.
Okay, so I can explain part of that.
Go ahead.
And I apologize.
He's like
waited 9 years for this.
No, they did the social media dump and then saw that this kid was all Red Sox and like, nah.
So I graduated in 11, and basically that year, they offered me like a part-time position as the assistant for that year. So I had interned with them in 09, which was my sophomore year in college. And then I graduated in 11. And right after I graduated, they kind of brought me back as like a part-time photography assistant. So there was no internship that year. So,
okay. So my portfolio was good. My letter of recommendations were good.
They were looking for
It's not good enough.
That's the time they were looking for. Okay. So my skill. Okay. Just want to make sure my skills are still good. All right.
I think you were good. Like I'm gonna put that on them.
Yeah. So give us an idea. Like, what does the internship entail for people who don't know? And then what becomes the difference once you become that part-time photo assistant?
Yep. So with the Orioles, it was really doing anything that the team photographer told you to do. So it was, and the thing I loved about it was the overwhelming majority of the experience was being out there shooting stuff. It wasn't like sitting at a desk, like scanning slides or answering emails or doing requests. Like, sure, there was some of that, but the majority of it was being out there, like shooting every day. So shooting like basic stuff, like the pregame ceremonies, photos of fans having a good time, photos of the stadium, beauty shots of Camden Yards, and then like assisting the team photographer on photo shoots, like portraits for the magazine and stuff like that. So it was an awesome experience. Then the assistant was just kind of like a little bit of a step up from that, a little bit more responsibility as far as what you were out there shooting, and you kind of, had the freedom to kind of take ownership of your own projects a little bit more. But also, we still worked as a team, and when you've only got 2 photographers, there's a lot to do. So kind of like divide and conquer. But with the part-time spot, you were, first from like a legal standpoint, you were able to work more hours. So it was more hours, but also more responsibility.
Now, all these questions that Jay has just asked have really led you to being, like, I would argue, one of the top photographers in Boston, especially in the sports scene. Not many people get there on their own. Is there someone in particular, like mentors, who have gotten you there to the top of the game, really?
Yeah, there's a lot. And I'm really lucky that the people that have taught me have been super willing to help and willing to pass their knowledge on. And like, I think especially like in the photography business, sometimes there's a hesitation because, you feel threatened. Like you feel like the next generation is going to come up and they're going to try and take your spot and they're going to be gunning for you.
That's me.
Yeah. So
it was me.
Right. And, the people that I worked with and learned from have been awesome, So Todd Olszewski was the Orioles team photographer. He still is. He's been there like 20 years now. He was and has been a mentor and a friend to me, and kind of like showed me the ropes and really took me in and took a chance on me when I look back at that portfolio and it was not good. Like, it was not good. And I still joke about it with him to this day. I'm like, dude, what were you looking at? Cause like, it wasn't good, but he was like, you did a good interview and like you had like motivation or whatever. And that was like more important than the work. So very grateful, And then Mike Ivins, who's the guy that I was hired by the Red Sox originally, who's still there, has also been an incredible mentor and friend to me. Learned so much about photography and the business side of photography, and also just about, being a good guy and a good employee. So yeah. And then there's tons of people from college and other photographers who are out there who've helped me along the way. So I'm lucky that I've had great people to help.
You eventually go to the Red Sox through this. And then, your first year was 2012, correct?
Correct.
That is also the 100th year anniversary of Fenway.
Yeah.
How is it
the only good thing that happened that year?
Yeah, I was gonna
That's
say,
about it.
At least we had something.
How is it like, though, on, I guess, your first day of work or the first game of the year? It's a historic day, and your job is literally to shoot history. Your job is to capture all these moments and all like that. What was that like? And then, like we said, the rest of the season wasn't that great, but this is your first experience in Boston. How does that compare to being out of Baltimore? Maybe this is your first time living outside the state.
Yeah.
Just kind of compare those.
Yeah, it was unreal for all those reasons. Like, so my mom grew up in Quincy, so I've got family up here. So we had always come up here for, holidays and whatever. So the Red Sox were always like my number 2 team, and like my friends will tell you, like, maybe sometimes they were like even with the Orioles as like my number 1, And so all of a sudden, like being like on the field and having the badge to like go down on the field level, like so quickly was like surreal to me. And like you said, this was the first time, I lived on campus in college. Like I lived in dorm rooms and stuff throughout college, but I was like 10 minutes from home. So it was just this was the first time that I was like in an apartment all by myself out there, well, with roommates, but like out there on my own, like kind of doing it. So it was all these like things happening at once. And then of course, like it just happens to be like one of the biggest days in Red Sox history, the 100th anniversary, as like your first day. So it was a little bit overwhelming. I'm not going to lie. But I try to just like play it cool, and luckily I'd had the 2 years of baseball experience under my belt already. And that really helped me out. I think if I had gone into this as my first ever professional sports experience, I would have been kind of lost. So
any like funny stories from that day or whatever, like took a picture like, this is better or something like that, or I don't know what, any photos, journalism, just inside jokes that they have, or is there anything like that happened on your first day that really still sticks with you? It was like,
there probably are. I got all kind of shit because
sure.
I made like so many mistakes. But I can't remember like off the top of my head.
It's all one big blur.
It's all good. We don't want to remember 2012 either.
No, yeah, it was a tough year. And that was like, that was kind of the main highlight of the year. Everything else was pretty bad. But for me, it was just cool to learn, and soak everything up that I could. And it was like I was at one level when I had come to the Red Sox. And, at the time, again, I thought it was pretty good. But looking back, I was nowhere close. And so then it was like jumping from that level to a whole different level. And like, photographers up here are really good, man. Like they're really good. And I learned that quickly. Like I was like, I really got to step my game up to keep up with these people up here. Cause this is a different level up here.
But like we just said, in 2012, it wasn't a good year. As a photographer, how do you really go about working around a team that's not winning? You're not getting all the game winning catch shots or the home run, the walk off. And like the classic, a photo tells 1,000 words. How do you, I guess, go about your work that way when the team's not doing well? There's all this off the field stories. Is there something that like you take a picture as an unbiased journalist going into this that is not going to be a good look for the Red Sox, but you still have to take it, you still have to do it for your job? Do you have anything like that from that particular year?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's a good question because like we're not unbiased journalists as the team photographers. The other guy, the other photographers who are shooting for the papers or the wires, they'll shoot the good, the bad, and the ugly. We have to be a little bit careful with that. But it's funny, like when the team is winning, as the team photographers, like we can usually get away with whatever we want. We can ask a player to do whatever, and most of the time they're going to be down for anything. And then when they're losing, it's like you're not going to get much done. Like keep your distance. So it's kind of weird that it's like a little bit out of our control what we get. And it's like if you look back at not to jump ahead, but like if you look back at 2013 and 2018, like the pictures from those years are just better. Like they're just better because everything was great. And there were no problems. There was no conflict. There was no stress. It was just everything flowing. So you just kind of like roll with the ups and downs of the season, and just try and read the room when it comes to like when things aren't going great. Just keep your distance a little bit.
I'm sure.
So can you like back to 2012, you're new to the team, new to the city, and all that. What is the process like as far as upper management, like PR, marketing, and media relations for the Sox as a whole? How much do they really like kind of like dip their fingers into what you do, and how much leeway did you have or did not have before you quote unquote proved yourself during your first year?
Well, I was lucky because when I came in, Mike had already been there for 5 or 6 years, and he had already kind of set the standard as far as like working with media relations and PR and kind of establishing that level of trust. So I was kind of working like under that bubble or under that shield. So I personally like didn't have to worry a whole lot about it as long as I went out and got the pictures that I needed to take. But it is definitely something that team photographers need to keep in mind. And I think the longer you're there, the less day-to-day like sets of approvals and conversations you have to go through, because over time you learn or you demonstrate that you're going to get the shots you need. You're not going to make the team or the guys look bad. And the day-to-day like direction or specific instructions from other various groups and departments within the company kind of, fall by the wayside because it's understood that you're going to do what you're going to do. So, but I learned that, like that took me time to learn over the years, and even still in 2012, I was kind of new to all that way of thinking.
All right, finally moving on past 2012.
Yeah.
2013 comes around. The Sox go from one of the worst teams to
Right.
the best team in baseball in quick 1 year turnaround. Do you have some favorite season highlights? Because that was a really emotional year, I think, for everybody in the Boston area, from the bombings to the Beards at the end to finally winning the World Series and being on top again for the first time in 6 years. Did you have any like your favorite highlights from that season, beginning, end, off the field, on the?
Yeah. I mean, I think the one that obviously sticks out is the day that baseball came back after the marathon and everything that followed. Like that was just a very emotionally charged day. Ortiz gives the speech. Like it was the first gathering after everything had been shut down for a week. So that was something, I'll never forget. And then it was just like, after that initial kind of return, it was like that season was just crazy. I think there was 11 walk-offs that year. And like every one of them was an awesome photo, And I was like, this is – yeah.
Even that game you were talking about coming back, I think that's the one Daniel Nava hit the home run.
Yeah.
And that was a pretty special – it wasn't a walk-off, but still
right.
like you could feel the energy in the city. Especially
you could just feel it. Like Nava kind of set the tone with that game, and then it just kept kind of following. I think Ellsbury had a couple, like Stephen Drew had one in extra innings. Like there was all kind of like crazy, and Gomes like had 3 in a row or something. Like, and those guys were awesome,
Kicking helmets.
Yeah, the flying, kicking the helmets everywhere and everything. So it just felt like the whole season, like the energy was just carrying through. And then, the beards, that was super cool, like just to see, and all the fans with the beards too, like just awesome energy. And that was something new for me, like growing up an Orioles fan. Like when I was really young, they were good, they were good and they were relevant and they were in the playoffs. But in my, older years and when I worked for them, they were at the bottom of the division. So I just
want to add, as a Red Sox fan living in Baltimore during that time, I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah.
I was going to Red Sox games for $12.
Oh yeah. No, that's the way to see it. For sure.
Yeah.
Do you have any off the field favorite moments from that 2013 season?
So I think like and it's technically on the field, but it's after the games or whatever. Like the AL East clinch that night. So this is a division clinch before any of the playoff rounds, but like that night was like so dope. Like the guys were just like celebrating like crazy, and front office was all, having a great time. And like, I had never experienced anything like that. I didn't realize that like the front office was just as big a part of it as the team, and to be a part of that, like was something that was really cool and new to me. So I'm sure there are other like specific one-offs, but you shoot so many games and so many things that it all kind of blurs together.
So I watched a quick documentary with a very famous photographer, Walter Yost Jr.
Mm-hmm. The GOAT.
I actually have his book right over here. But he relayed a story about during the '88 dunk contest with Michael Jordan, how he basically said a photo is worthless. Everything can be great, and obviously this, but our listeners may not know. If you don't have the face, if you don't have the eyes and the expression, that photo is 99% of the time worthless. And he reached out to Jordan before the dunk contest and was basically like, "Hey, what are you going to do? Where are you going to be? And where should I be?" And Jordan basically was like, "Oh, I'm going to do this and that." And before the free throw line dunk to win the dunk contest, he motioned Walter over so he would be in a better position. is that something that's common? Like I think back to like, you know, Johnny kicking the helmet. Is that something that he's like, hey, Billy, like, if I ever do this, look out for this because this might happen, or, you know, something like that? Does that ever happen where the players reach out to you and say, if I hit a home run, like I might do this or something like that?
It's not common, but it does.
Okay, so then who has done that?
So it's happened a couple times. For me, the one that stands out was, I guess it was 17 or 18, Wind Dance Repeat.
Okay.
So, you know, like Mookie and CY and Jackie and Benny, those guys would kind of give me like a heads up of like what they were going to do. Maybe a few innings before, like, cause the photo pit's right next to the dugout. So, you know, I would kind of look over and they'd give me like a little nod or whatever of like, who's going to be the guy and like what's going down. And then when they clinched that year, he told me like, Mookie told me what they were going to do, which was like all three of them like kind of jumping out and exploding together. So like that happens, but I wouldn't say it happens often. That's why, you know, a story like that is why Walter is like so incredible, you know, and kind of change the game. But are there players,
or do you feel that players are cognizant of, or that during big moments that they kind of maybe get a little more expression, or do you feel that they're cognizant of that you're there and that you're going to get that image?
Yeah, it's interesting.
They look towards the photo pit is what I'm asking. Like,
I think some of them do ham it up, you know, and some of them aren't even aware that they're doing it. It just happens. But like, I do like ask those guys sometimes. I'm like, yo, like, do you notice like when we're there, like if someone's in your face taking a picture, like, do you notice it or whatever? And most of the time they're like, yeah, like obviously we see you, you know, we can't not see you, but they've been around that atmosphere so much that it's like, you block it out, you know? But it's funny with that, like, even though like the guys know the shower is coming, right? It's still like the reaction is still real and genuine, you know?
So cold.
So most of the time it's not like they're staging a reaction or like hamming it up. Like most of the time it is like a real, genuine, you know, reaction. So I like it.
We can move on to 2018 now. We talked about those 2013 moments. Same kind of question I just asked, but what were some of your favorite moments of that 2018 team? Because I think arguably that's like put up against the 04 team. It's one of the best Sox teams in recent history. What were some of your favorite moments that stuck out, players, anything from that year?
So one distinction between 18 and 13 is that like when 18 rolled around, I was in a very different position personally than I was in 13. So there had been some kind of changes within our group. And I was now kind of like the head photographer, the lead photographer. So, you know, with that, I was much more like, I guess, like embedded and in tune with the team and the group of guys than I was back in 2013. So I think the first thing that sticks out was Cora bringing together all the team and all the front office for this group photo at the first or second day of spring training that year, which is something that's never been done before. Simple, you know, sounds like a simple thing, but it's never been done before. So it was like immediately we kind of realized like, okay, this is like a different tone, you know, this is something different. We're all like kind of being grouped together as one big like family, one big team. And that set the tone for like the rest of the year. So I mean, 18 was crazy. There was so much going on that year. Like it felt like, you know, from the baseball side, it felt pretty similar to 13, but it was just like nonstop, like winning, you know, and
even when they're down, just finding a way.
It was insane. Like every time they were like seemingly out of it, it was like, you know,
got them right where they want them.
Yeah. You've got the Joe Kelly fight, obviously, as a big moment in the year. Couple, you know, the Mookie Grand Slam. I'm just looking at the pictures from that year. The Mookie Grand Slam, Xander's walk-offs, like crazy stuff. And then obviously the playoffs itself is a completely different, you know.
Do you keep like some of your favorite photos for yourself? Like, do you keep like, obviously you're going to have them for the team, but are you like setting them as your desktop? Are you setting them, like printing them out, putting them on the walls in your home? Like, do you have some favorite images that you definitely keep like around the house?
I have around the house more like, I guess like memorabilia or not like things that involve my photos, but they're not just like my photos. But I've got like, a picture of Koji and Rossi like jumping into each other's arms from the, and Salty from, from 2013. And like, somebody got them to sign it for me. I have that frame, like stuff like that, but I don't have like just my photos hanging up around the house.
So I saw a video. It's kind of like Cribs with JD.
Yeah.
And his little man cave, a little better than my man cave. But he has the group photo all huge. Like, what does that like mean to you when you look back at your career and obviously like where you started, just a kid and, growing up in Maryland, and now you have these multi-millionaire, famous, professional athletes, these stars that are hanging up your work in their homes. Can you talk about like what that means to you, just as a personal, less professional level?
It means a lot. It really does. And I don't think I realized it until like this winter. We did that Cribs episode, and we visited Vasquez also, and Matt Barnes and a couple other guys, and like all of them had photos up in their wall, and it just validates the work you do and shows that it means a lot to the guys and to their families. And, you don't always like think about that part of it when you're shooting. You're thinking about like, all right, I got to get these pictures out for social or whatever, but that is another big part of it, is that you're documenting somebody's life, and it means a lot to them, so it's really special. It means a lot. And I just try and keep like the human element of these guys in mind when I'm working. Like you said, they are multimillionaires and they're famous, and they live some lifestyles that, a lot of us at times can't really imagine, but end of the day, they're people just like you and I, and they've got families, and, this stuff means a lot to them. So it's cool. It's cool to be able to see.
On the other side of that, you kind of said like you got to get pictures out for social and everything. As opposed to Ride the Wave, I also work for another social media company. And a problem that we run into here and there is that, say we'll post someone's picture on social media, but we wouldn't properly tag them or credit them simply because we would type in something on Google Images and find a picture like, oh, it's a good picture, let's use that. How frustrating is that as a photographer when you see something like that you took? I know that whenever we run into that problem, it's all well-intentioned. It's not like, oh, let's get this guy's picture out there and not credit him, but it's just more wrong place, wrong time, I guess. So how do you deal with, I guess, not getting credited? Do you reach out to people? Because I've had people reach out to me almost every single time I've done that. Just what's your process with that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So at the beginning, I think when I was coming up, it made me more upset than it does now. The landscape we're in, there's so much out there as far as media, and content, and it's impossible to survey it all and keep track of like every photo that gets posted and where it ends up, so like, I don't know, it's happened to me so many times by now that it's like, it is what it is, now obviously I support photographers getting credited for their work and getting, compensated in the right way for their work. But it's just tough at times to catch every single one, and I think, like you said, most of the time it's not ill-intentioned. It's just that, either people don't have the resources or the knowledge to know that, like, yes, you do need to pay for photos. I think what's more frustrating is when people try and hire you or use you to shoot something, but they don't expect to pay or don't expect to pay a rate that is, deserving of what the actual work is. Like, for me, that's much more frustrating, like, especially when it comes to the Red Sox photos too. I don't own them at the end of the day, so.
Yeah. And then the second part of this is, you said like how you need to have a quick turnaround time. How often of your time, I guess, goes into editing the pictures in Photoshop and Lightroom and anything like that, as opposed to get it up as quick as you can?
Can I just add to that real quick? Sorry. Just as like you said, the difference between you as a staff photographer for a team versus a wire photojournalist. if you could, when you finish answering that question, if you could go into what are your limitations, or do you have any limitations as far as what you can do in Lightroom as far as like journalistic integrity and stuff like that?
Right. So I spend not that long editing the photos. Like I try and get them as close as I possibly can in camera, and that just comes with being a good shooter and a precise shooter, and really dialing in your settings, and learning, what settings work. I do a little bit of basic color correction, basic sharpening, basic crop. But beyond that, I'm not like totally manipulating the photo. I'm not altering the background. I'm not cloning out or adding things in or taking things away. Like that for me draws the line. Even though we're technically considered like marketing PR, I still, personally, I still feel like that draws the line. There are rare cases when like I'll work with our designers and we will have to Photoshop something. Like the one example that sticks out was did a portrait of Mookie and JD together. They were, having this crazy year together in 18. And they showed up to the shoot just in shorts. So white jersey, we wanted the full whites. They showed up in shorts.
Ready.
Yeah, exactly. Just like that. And they weren't going to change. So, we shot it as is, but just, it didn't look right. So our designer did a Photoshop job on, and that ended up the cover of our magazine. So there have been times when, when we've done that, but I don't in that case, I won't put that out, to the Getty Wire, or I won't put that out. Like it's that crosses the line as far as like the journalistic integrity.
And what do you enjoy more? Do you enjoy or does it kind of go back and forth? Because I know that's kind of how it was for me. Mm-hmm. Do you enjoy the behind the scenes stuff? Do you enjoy the portraiture work? Do you enjoy the game day, shooting where it can kind of get tedious and stuff? And obviously with portraiture, right, you can kind of, use gels and all that stuff, right, kind of make it a little more fun. What part do you enjoy the most? Or
the portraiture I love because it's the one opportunity where you have like total creative freedom to, come up with an idea and run with it and see if you can execute it. Whereas the games, you're at the mercy of whatever's happening. And sometimes the games are really boring. Sometimes they're 5 hours long, and sometimes they're great. So you just don't know. But I really like the portrait work. And I also really like the kind of like lifestyle away from the field stuff, kind of humanize the players and show that they've got families and they've got interests and, business ventures that they're into and stuff like that. So those two things kind of keep me fresh and keep me creatively like motivated during a long season when it all starts to look the same every day.
Speaking of your relationships with players, I noticed you're wearing the Brocking Out Cancer shirt.
Yeah, proudly.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about like your relationships with players that have come through the system, especially with Brock Hole? I know you got a good relationship with that family.
Yep. So one thing about the job is that if you're lucky enough to stick around for long enough, you do develop, relationships and friendships with the players. Now you got to be careful that it doesn't go too far. You still got a job to do. But it's really cool to get to know the guys and their families. And over the years, you kind of do other things for them. They have you do like some family portraits and baby announcements and gender reveals and stuff like that. Weddings, like I shot Matt Barnes' wedding. So things like that, you get to know them as people, and it's really cool, and that helps you in turn get better stuff when you're at the park doing the Red Sox stuff, because they're comfortable with you, they trust you, and they know that you're going to make them look good and get good stuff. So it's been awesome. It's been awesome to get to know, a lot of these guys and have the good friendships and relationships outside of just work.
So as far as team photographers go, because you talked about you do these lifestyle shoots, you shot Matty B's wedding and stuff like that.
Yep.
I've shot baseball games and sports, and I worked as a freelance wedding photographer for 3 years, and those could not be more opposite when it comes to what you're actually doing, what you're actually shooting. It's yeah. Is that something that players on other teams will just be like, hey man, I'm getting married. Do you mind? Is that common And did you have any experience shooting weddings prior to shooting Barnes's wedding?
I think it's pretty common for the team photographers who are with the teams full time. You know, they get to know their players, and a lot of the team photographers, once they're kind of in a place, they stay for a while. You know, so you know, thinking about other photographers around the league, I've seen them do weddings and portrait shoots with their family, with their players' families and things like that. So it's definitely pretty common among team photographers in pro sports. Weddings, yeah, I had shot weddings before. You know, I do a pretty decent amount of weddings every year, and so I was pretty experienced in weddings before shooting mats. So I think.
Did you shoot in Baltimore?
Yeah, I'd done a couple in Baltimore, and then over the years up here since 2012, kind of been building that side.
How many times have you got that Belvedere shot?
Actually, that was the first one. That was the first one I'd done. I had attended a wedding there. But yeah, that was the first one I'd shot. But it
that
is
and the top of Fed Hill for engagements, like the two
like,
most iconic Baltimore shots.
Yeah, that was Baltimore as it gets right there.
So moving on. Sorry. So it's a Tuesday, playing the Blue Jays. What keeps you fresh? Do you break out different lenses? Do you move around to different parts? Do you like escape the photo well and get out and move around? Is that something that you have the ability to do? Is that something you send your assistant to do? Is that something you enjoy doing if you do that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have to do it to stay fresh, or else you'll go crazy. Because we've got 162 games, 81 at home. Like, it is the same thing every day. So shooting from the first base photo pit every day, like, you drive yourself nuts just doing the same thing over and over. So I push myself to get out and like be mobile and walk around. And I always kind of feel like, it's like you should feel like exhausted after the game. You should have walked the stadium 3 or 4 times and, got a good sweat on and carried 3 cameras on you and tried to hit every angle you could hit. And I feel like if you did that, then like you had a good day. And if you sat in the photo pit all day, you kind of mailed it in. And I'm guilty of doing that. Like, I've done that plenty of times, but I try and just push myself, and get out there and move around and try different lenses and different things. And sometimes it works and sometimes you feel like you're just forcing it, but you got to do that stuff to stay fresh, or else like you go crazy,
Can you kind of describe, because obviously, even though you're the team photographer, you're not the only photographer in that pit. What's the mood like in there? I guess on an average day, are people friendly with each other? Are they competitive with each other? Are they elbowing each other to get the shot? What's it like in there?
It's like a little bit of all of the above, I'd say. But overwhelmingly, it's very friendly. Especially in Boston, like the photography community is really close, really tight. We take care of each other. We look out for each other. Obviously in high pressure, high stress situation, playoffs, things are like really tight, and there's a lot of bodies in there and there's a lot going on, and things can get out of hand, but it's never, most of the time it's not taken as anything personal. It's just like, look, we're all in this, like, we're doing things. We're going to bump elbows. We're going to bump into each other sometimes, but it's all kind of understood. So
explain, it's Chris Sale's on the mound. Machado's up about the strikeout. We all know that.
Yeah.
What's it like when we all knew he was going to strike out. What's it like when this is it? Like, what are those, like, that minute before you're prepping to get ready, the celebrations are happening. What's it like in the photo pit during, like, obvious times of these are like career making shots that you're about to take?
Right. It's tense because, like, you don't necessarily think about your career, but you're thinking about, like, you're literally documenting history and you cannot screw it up, like, you cannot screw it up. And that's like, in that moment, like, Sales, up there, going to strike out Machado. It's like, okay, this is going to happen. I need to not screw this up. And I'm mentally, like, checking off all the things that I need to do to guarantee that I get the shot, from like my lens choice and my focus to how my feet are planted on the ground, so that if somebody bumps into me in all the chaos, they're not going to, like, knock me over and I'm going to miss it. It's like all these thoughts running through your head. And then it's just like, you just fire, and you see what happens. But it's, those moments are tense, and you kind of get, like, you still get that little bit of, like, butterflies inside, which I think is cool. It's fun, keeps you, means you care. So yeah.
Last question on my end. What are your long-term, I guess, career goals? Do you want to stick with baseball? Do you want to stick with the Red Sox? Go to different sports? Leave sports? I'm not exactly sure. Like we said, I'm also like a comm major, but I'm not doing the photo side. I'm doing more like video, writing, everything like that. So you always have like a step up.
Right.
Where do you see yourself, I guess, the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years in your career? And what are your long-term goals?
Yeah.
That's Pete Souza.
Hey, that'd be cool. Although not right now, I'll tell you that much. Yeah, I mean, look, I love where I'm at with the Red Sox. It's an awesome, for me, it's a dream job. And it has been, they're a great company to work for, great coworkers who are also, what I consider my friends. It's an awesome experience, and it's taken me to really cool places and met some really cool people. I don't know where it'll take me. I do want to shoot other sports. I don't know if that I don't really think that necessarily means like having to leave the team, but there's a long list of sporting events that I want to do. Like, got to get to the Olympics. I want to do the Tour de France, like, things like that. A couple other tennis tournaments that I haven't done that I want to do. Super Bowls, there's like tons of things that I want to like check off my list and say that I've done. So just keep pushing for those, and we'll see what happens. I don't know where it'll take us, but it's been a good ride so far, and I'm definitely very happy with where things are at the moment.
Yeah.
So if you were to call David Silverman for the Patriots and just say, I want to shoot this game, is that happening?
He's got his guys. So
okay.
Yeah, he's got his guys, and likewise, but I think there'll be a lot more collaboration in the, as content grows, and the need for visuals continue to grow. I think there will be a lot more collaboration, but yeah, I mean, Silverman's awesome. All the team photographers, like we're all tight, so we all look out for each other. And
that's what I was going to add. That was my next question. So like, what is it? Brian
Babs,
is the Celtics, got Babs. Yeah. And then Babs, that's our guy.
Yeah.
But,
Brian Babbitt, right? Or something.
Yeah.
I follow him on Instagram.
Yeah. And then,
Steve,
like obviously you and Silverman. I don't know hockey, so I don't know who the hockey is.
So Steve Babineau is the Bruins team photographer, and that's Brian's dad. So yeah, so Steve is the Bruins photographer, Brian's the Celtics photographer, and they both have their TD Garden empire together. So it's pretty sick.
Do you ever get jealous that they're just inside 70 degrees and air conditioned every day? Light never changes.
Like those rainy, like 4-hour like games in April, like those are when I'm like, man, I picked the wrong sport, bro. Like I should have done like basketball or
2
football,
hours
where
and
they only have 16 games or whatever, But nah, they're all good guys. We all like are always talking and stuff. So yeah, team photographers, we all stick together for sure.
That's all I got on my end, unless you guys have anything else.
No, I think that about wraps it up. Thanks for being on with us, Billy.
Okay. I don't know why. I have one question that I've always wanted to ask.
Go for it.
So I was shooting, and when I was in the military, I reached out to the Orioles organization. As a combat photography, one of the things that we should be good at is shooting what we call unscripted action. But when we're not deployed, we're left doing the happy snaps, the ceremonies, and stuff like that. So one of the things that I always strive to do was find manners to shoot stuff where I'm not in control of what's going on. I reached out to the Orioles, and I was actually lucky enough to shoot a couple of games. And one of the games that I shot was I want to say Orioles Tigers, but I don't remember. But anyways, it was a walk-off home run, and I was on the third baseline. And that shot, like the guy's running home, hands up in the air, the whole team's waiting.
Right.
And I'm like, oh my God, this is it. I'm the only photographer over here. I'm going to get this shot. This is fantastic. Third base ump just scrolls slowly. He's in every single frame and has blocked the whole thing. And it's just one of those shots that I go, I didn't get it. It wasn't my fault, but I didn't get it. Are there any shots that you can look back during your time that maybe due to your own fault? Because I'll tell another funny story. I was photographing the I think it was the AT&T or the Tiger Woods golf tournament down in Bethesda that he does, the AT&T National. And the guy next to me Tiger wins, puts his hands up, and his camera just out. He filled his memory card.
Yep.
And just completely missed like the championship winning putt. So stuff like that happens. Can you kind of share your stories of, obviously you're not perfect, you're a human being, where something has happened maybe technically, I don't want to say proficiently, but or maybe something out of control where there's a shot that you would have loved to have.
I don't have any major disasters where like I totally lost like a card or, whatever, but I could make you a book of times I screwed up, like, or I got blocked by an umpire or a third base coach, or I back focused the shot or whatever, like, or I was looking somewhere else when I should have been looking another way. Like, it happens all the time. It still happens, to this day. It's probably never going to stop happening. I used to get pretty mad at myself, but it's like, you realize like you're not out there. Like, I don't know, you're just taking pictures of a sports game. So end of the day, like, it's all good, unless it's like last out of the World Series, then you're screwed.
I tell people all the time when they look at, I don't shoot anymore, but when they would look at my portfolio, like, wow, you're a really good photographer. I'm like, you don't see the stuff I show you.
That's all the best stuff, and you don't see all the bad stuff.
Yeah, a photographer's portfolio is like your Instagram feed. It's just all the good stuff. Yeah,
it's your good stuff, right?
And then one final question:
mm-hmm.
when you're shooting, did you kind of have any study of how the game works? Like, do you look at the mannerisms, or I guess the tendencies of the players where, all right, so I know that this manager likes to kind of run on a left-handed, like, and kind of plan the shot up ahead, or are you just flying by the seat of your pants?
Totally. Like, you look for those tendencies, and especially with your own team, you get to know kind of their mannerism, like each guy's mannerisms, like, their routines, like, like when they're all warming up before the game, like everyone has their exact routine that they do every single day down to like the minute, and so you learn those mannerisms, and that helps you, when you're shooting. And I think just generally, no matter what you're shooting as a photographer, like if you know your subject matter, you really understand what you're shooting, it's just going to translate naturally to better pictures. So, that goes to whether you're a news photographer or weddings or corporate or whatever. It's just like, the more education and the more the better your pictures are going to be. So doing the research and just keeping an eye out for stuff like that is super, super important.
Like watching film.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Same exact thing.
I shot the Baltimore Blast a couple times, and I'm not a soccer fan. I know nothing about it. I was lost. I was like, I don't know. Plus, it's indoor soccer, so it's like
totally
fast. I
would be lost at a Blast game. Totally lost. But.
Awesome. Well, Billy, thank you so much for coming on the show. As if I haven't made it obvious, I'm a big fan of your work. You're kind of in the dream job. If I wasn't going to be the center fielder for the Red Sox, I'd be doing what you're doing. So I really do appreciate you taking out the time of your day to come on and discuss kind of your role and your background with the team. And again, thanks for coming on.
Thank you guys so much. You guys are doing good work.
If you want to plug it,
yeah, absolutely. Is there anything you want to
yeah, I mean, you can follow me on Instagram. It's BJ Weiss 22. Same thing on TikTok. Trying to figure that out.
There we go.
Yeah.
Just made a new YouTube page.
And then just started a YouTube channel. So Billie Weiss on YouTube. So we're gonna get more stuff up there too. So
awesome.
Thank you guys for having me. You guys are doing great work. So keep it up.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Yes.